I read this book because I wanted to learn how to better engage with the text I'm reading, how to better understand it. I also wanted to read this book because I want to create a deeper love for reading and literature for my kid. So I thought it could give me some pointers and advice on how to do it. This book was great at everything I wanted out of it. I cannot recommend it enough. I'm Maria from Read Fine Books, and today we are talking about Notice and Note Strategies for Close Reading. This is a book by Kyleen and Robert E. Probst. This is a nonfiction book about close reading and deeper learning. It is written first and foremost for teachers. In fact, after about having read 10% of it, why my only thoughts were I so wish my teachers could have read this when I was in school. It has a way of presenting things that makes you want to go to school, makes you have a conversation with those teachers, makes you fall in love with teaching, and makes you excited about learning stuff. At least it did for me. Again, this book is written first for teachers, and I'm not a teacher, but I still got a lot of value from it. If you are a parent and want to teach your child, it doesn't have to be homeschooling. I'm not homeschooling. My kid is almost 3, but what I want is for him to fall in love with reading. And I want that to be done early on. I want reading for him to be a passion, but not only that. I want for him reading to be a way of understanding the world. I want him to have a critical mind. And this book helped me with actual pointers on how to do that. Yes, it is intended to be used in a classroom, but the advice remains there. The conversation, the way to open a conversation about a text, it's still there. You can do that on your own. It doesn't have to be in a classroom if you only want to do it for your child. You can open up a conversation about the text using the methods described here. This was just an amazing book for me. The premise for Notice and Note was always that what's done in schools around literacy is not enough. And I completely agree. The school, at least here in Romania, is a lot about learning to respond to tests, learning what others have said about the text. It's not about you actually understanding it. It's not about using your own words to describe something. It's not about critical thinking. And this book actually made all learning about critical thinking. It has to start somewhere, and it starts with a few signposts. Signposts are patterns that these teachers have observed in the books the children are using in schools right now. If a student is taught to recognize these signposts and is taught to react to it, he will keep on seeing these signposts in everything. He will learn to engage with the text on his own because he has a starting point. So, which are the signposts I'm talking about? The authors have found 6. You can find a lot more things that keep on repeating in middle grade books, but as the book says, if you focus on too much from the start, the student will not engage as much with the text and will get lost in details. So, for starters, 6 signposts are more than enough for him to observe. The first one is contrast and contradictions. Contrast meaning a way a character is behaving as opposed to other characters. For example, um, a way a character is treated as opposed to others, or contradictions meaning a difference between how a character is supposed to act, what is expected of him, and how he acts. When students start seeing this pattern in a book, they should ask themselves, why does this happen? Why does this character behave this way? If he starts asking this question, a student will then be able to understand character development, internal conflict, things like that. So we start small, and with this small start, we later go on to character development. That for me is helpful, is a way to start the conversation around characters, around behavior. You know, it is, of course, intuitive for us as adults, but the way this book puts it, the way they suggest using general language as opposed to um, discussing what actually happens in this one book, in this one particular instance, is really helpful for students to then be able to generalize themselves and use the same pattern of thinking in other books. Another signpost is, for example, the aha moment. This is the moment when a character realizes or understands something that previously he had not known. When a student stumbles upon this post, he should stop and ask himself, how does this change things? This thing of stopping while in the middle of a book is very difficult. When you have this kind of realization, stopping to think what might happen, at my age I cannot do that. I cannot stop to think. I need to go on and see what happens. But the importance of stopping is so well described in this book. I really need to get to practice this as well. So again, this book was helpful for me too as well at a personal level. This is why I'm recommending it. It was amazing for me just because I need to develop my reading skills a lot more as well. There are 4 more signposts. So I'm not going to get into all of the signposts. You can find them on my blog. Mm, but but really, you need to read this book if you want a deeper understanding of this, because um, this book has exactly how these things should be taught in order to maximize their results, in order to actually achieve this way of thinking from the students, this critical thinking, this independent way of thinking. You shouldn't expect results from one day to the next. No, things don't happen that quickly. This is a pattern that needs to be practiced a lot before it becomes an actual way of thinking things. But it does become that. It actually changes the way kids view and understand the world around them. That was the most amazing thing I learned from this book. This way of observing literature and um, understanding literature has had an effect on the way children are seeing everything, are questioning everything. After a few months of really thinking this way in their literature classes, they started to ask themselves the same questions in other classes as well. They started to see these patterns in their own lives, and um, that made them better thinkers, critical thinkers. And they exemplify that by talking to teachers from other disciplines. Uh, they actually give examples of how students changed the way they were thinking things and became really more engaged with learning as a whole. They became more engaged with everything they did. That makes it very powerful. Of course, manage your expectations. This is not something that happens from one day to the next. No, it's a process. It has to be reinforced for a period of a few months, but it does work. Students who are more engaged with texts become better thinkers. That for me was just amazing. I am already applying it on my own reading and seeing things better, stopping and thinking more about what I read. My reading has evolved a lot in the last 20 years, but uh, I was equally guilty as these kids of waiting for everything from my teacher. In school, I wasn't thinking at all. I was just absorbing things. I wasn't stopping to actually analyze things, not as much as I should have. Critical thinking is a skill I deeply lacked, and it is a skill I still need to work on a lot. So, again, um, this book is aimed towards teachers, but everyone can find a lot of value in it, especially if you want to learn to read better for yourself, or if you want to um, instill in your children this kind of education, this kind of thinking. You can find value in this book. You can apply things here without actually having an entire classroom of children to work with. It is something I really wish my teachers would have read when I was in school. Do you have a similar recommendation? What is the one book you wish your teachers would have read to change the way they approached you or the way they approach teaching? Let me know. I'm Maria from Read Fine Books. Thank you for watching.